Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj Srila Gurudev ki jai. Nitil Pravishtam Vishnupad Rashatarashatashmad Srila Bhaktivedanta Vaman Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Nitil Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashatarashatashmad Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitil Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashatarashatashmad Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Nitil Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashatarashatashmad Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada ki jai. Nitil Pravishta Maha-Bhagavat Srila Goraksharas Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Nitil Pravishta Srila Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur ki jai. Nitil Pravishta Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Shri Rupano Gauriya Guru Varga ki jai. Shri Rup Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jeev Gopal Patadash Raghunath Shara Goswami Prabhu ki jai. Shri Sarup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shri Gaur Parshad Vrinda ki jai. Namachay Shri Haridas Thakur ki jai. प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासरी गौर भक्त वृंद की जाय। श्री क्षेत्र मंडल गौर मंडल व्रज मंडल मथुरा वृंदावन धाम की जाय। सर्व अभिष्ट प्रदाते गिरिराज महाराज की जाय। श्री राधा कुंड श्याम कुंड की जाय। श्री मुनि देवी गंगा देवी की जाय। श्री तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी की जाय। श्री भक्ति देवी की जाय। श्री पूर्णमासी योग माया की जाय। श्री गोपेश्वर महादेव की जय। श्री हरि नाम संकीर्तन की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। समागत गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। ओम ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जन शलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्री गुरुवे नमः। नमो ओम विष्णुपदाय राधिकाय प्रियात्मने श्री श्रीमद् भक्ति वेदांत नारायणिति नामिने। नमो ओम विष्णुपदाय कृष्ण पृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने। वंशकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानं पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो महावदन्याय कृष्ण प्रेम प्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्ण चैतन्य नाम्ने गौरतिशे नमः। गुरुवे गौरचन्द्राय राधिकायै तदालये कृष्णाय कृष्ण भक्ताय तद्भक्ताय नमो नमः। यं प्रव्रजन्तम् अनुपेतमपेतकृत्यं द्वैपायनो विरहकातर आजुहाव। पुत्रेति तन्मयतया तरवो विनेदुस्तं सर्वभूत हृदयं मुनिमानतोऽस्मि। नारायणं नमस्कृत्यं नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। शृण्वतं स्वाकथा कृष्ण पुण्यश्रवणकीर्तन हृदन्तस्थो ह्यवत्राणि विधुनोति सुहृत्सतं। नष्टप्रायेष्वभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवत्युत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्ठकी। तवैवास्मि न जीवामि त्वया विना इति विज्ञाय राधे त्वां नयमां चरणान्तिकम्। भक्त्या विहीन अपराधलक्षय क्षिप्ताष्टकामादितरङ्गमध्ये कृपामयि त्वं शरणं प्रपन्ना वृन्दे नमस्ते चरणारविन्दम्। भज श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासरी गौर भक्त वृंदा। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। Dandavat pranams Gargaraji, Rup Manjari Didi, Madhavi Didi, Prajumna Prabhu, Mantramurti Mataji, Raseshwari Mataji, and Ganga Didi. Dandavat pranams. So after hearing Rahūgaṇa's questions in the previous chapter, what were his questions? Okay, so Rahūgaṇa questioned about Jaḍa Bharata's arguments that he weren't fatigued. He says the soul appears fatigued. He says, although the soul is different from the body, the soul appears to be fatigued due to bodily labor, like carrying a palanquin. One cannot carry water with a false pot, so one must accept the conventional world. And then he gives an example. Wait, actually, do we have time to do all this? Let's see if it has the questions here. Yes, okay, it explains it in here, so I'm just going to read from here, because I started late today. I had a meeting at, what time? 2:30 in the morning. And then I had a hard time falling asleep after the meeting, and so I'm just a little bit, yeah. Anyways, okay, so materially absorbed people cannot understand tattva. Though inexperienced, you speak like an experienced man. An experienced person discerns the truth and doesn't speak about mundane social behaviors like the relationship between master and servant. Note, in the previous chapter in verse 22, Rahūgaṇa gave the example of a pot heated by fire in which rice is being cooked in milk. In this example, there is a connection between the pot and the fire. But the liberated Atma is a spiritual particle and does not touch the material senses. Fatigue of the body does not mean fatigue of the Atma. Only a conditioned jiva covered by the material body experiences fatigue due to fatigue in the body. Even Veda bodies generally don't discuss tattva. People interested in material activities are inclined toward material sacrifices expounded in the Vedas. For such people, pure discussions on the absolute truth generally do not arise. The Vedas are insufficient. For one who realizes that material happiness is insignificant like a dream, the Vedas, though an excellent source, become insufficient means for understanding the highest truth. Link. Why do people engage in material happiness despite being enlightened by devotees? Answer to that is, the mind expands through the senses. The mind, contaminated by the three modes, is like an uncontrolled elephant. It expands pious and impious activities through the knowledge senses and the action senses. It keeps one in the material world to suffer or enjoy. Here are the characteristics of the mind. The mind is endowed with pious The mind is endowed with pious and sinful impressions. It is attached to material sense enjoyment. It is conducted by the three modes. It is subject to the transformations of lust and anger. It is the chief among the 16 elements. The mind is the cause of different types of bodies in higher and lower positions with different names. The mind is the covering on the jiva made by Maya. The mind deceives the jiva into the wheel of repeated birth and death. The mind creates unavoidable distress, happiness, unavoidable distress, happiness, and illusion over the course of time. Samsara is caused by the mind. The mind makes the jiva wander through different species of life in different conditions. Thus, the mind is the cause of bodily appearance, bondage, and liberation. And then link. So, how can one mind be the cause of opposite conditions, bondage and liberation? The mind causes both bondage and liberation. The lamp analogy. The attached mind. When the attached mind is absorbed in sense gratification, it brings about conditional life and suffering. Just like when the flame of a lamp burns improperly with a charred wick, the lamp is blackened. And the detached mind. When the detached mind becomes unattached to material enjoyment, it becomes the cause of liberation. Just like when the lamp is filled with ghee and is burning properly, there is bright illumination. Functions of the mind. The functions of the okay, so the mind controls the 5 knowledge senses, which are sound, touch, form, taste, and smell. And it also controls the 5, did I say working senses? I meant to say 5 knowledge senses. Sound, touch, form, taste, and smell. And it controls the 5 working senses: speech, touch, movement, evacuation, and sex. And the function of the mind is false ego, which is twofold: identification and possessiveness, which means I am this body, and mine, these things are mine. This is my society, my family, my body, my mind. Yeah. The physical, so unlimited transformations of the mind. The physical elements, nature, culture, destiny, and time are all material causes. They agitate the functions of the mind, which transforms into hundreds, thousands, and millions. They become unlimited, not by themselves or by their combined strength, but by the power of Paramatma, the Supersoul. Note, both Paramatma and Jiva are Kshetragya. In verse 11 and 13 mentioned Paramatma, but verse 6 previously describes the condition of the Jiva, and verse 12 describes the liberated Jiva. 11, 13 are Paramatma, 6 is the conditioned Jiva, 12 is the liberated Jiva. Okay, a liberated soul is absorbed in the Supreme Lord. The liberated Jiva can see the transformations of the mind, which are made of Maya, existing since time immemorial, sometimes manifest in their wakeful and dreaming states, sometimes disappear during deep sleep or trance. The conditioned Jiva absorbs himself in the conventional world of samsara, but the liberated Jiva absorbs himself in the Supreme Lord, who has the following characteristics. So here's the characteristics of the Supreme Lord, Kshetragya. He is the all-pervading cause of creation, the unrestricted controller, the original, perceived by hearing and direct perception, self-effulgent, not experiencing birth, death, old age, or disease. The Supreme Lord is the controller of all the demigods, the shelter of the jivas after the annihilation of this world, full of all opulences, the resting place of everything material, present within the hearts of all living entities by his own potency, and all-pervading, just as the air enters and controls all moving and stationary beings in the form of pran. Lord Vasudeva, the knower of all bodies, enters all bodies and controls them. Alright, so that's where we read up to yesterday. Nayavaretam tanubrinarendra viduyamayam vayunodayena vimukta sango jitashat sapatno vedatmatatvam brahmati hatavat. My dear King Rahūgaṇa, as long as the conditioned soul accepts the material body and is not freed from the contamination of material enjoyment, and as long as he does not conquer his 6 enemies and come to the platform of self-realization by awakening his spiritual knowledge, he has to wander among different places and different species of life in this material world. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. And what are the 6 enemies? I think it's Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moha, Mada, and Matsarya. What is that? Kam, lust, Krodh, anger, Lobha, greed, Moha, illusion, Mada, intoxication, and Matsarya, envy. Those are the 6 enemies. Right? Purport. When one's mind is absorbed in the material conception, he thinks that he belongs to a particular nation, family, country, or creed. These are called upadis, designations, and one has to become freed from them. Sarvapadi vinirmuktam. As long as one is not freed, he has to continue the conditioned life in material existence. The human form of life is meant for cleansing away these misconceptions. If this is not done, one has to repeat the cycle of birth and death, and thus suffer all material conditions. Na yavaritan manal atmalingam sangsara vapanam janasya yachoka moha mayaragalobha vairanubandham mamatam vitate. The soul's designation, the mind, is the cause of all tribulations in the material world. As long as this fact is unknown to the conditioned living entity, he has to accept the miserable condition of the material body and wander within this universe in different positions. Because the mind is affected by disease, lamentation, illusion, attachment, greed, and enmity, it creates bondage and a false sense of intimacy within this material world. Purport. The mind is the cause of both material bondage and liberation. The impure mind thinks, I am not this The impure mind thinks, I am this body. The pure mind knows that he is not the material body. Therefore, the mind is considered to be the root of all material designations. Until the living entity is aloof from the association and contaminations of this material world, the mind will be absorbed in such material things as birth, death, disease, illusion, attachment, greed, and enmity. In this way, the living entity is conditioned, and he suffers material miseries. Bhratrivyam enam tar adabraviryam upakshayadhe dhitamat pramata gurur harishcharanopassanastra jahi vyalikam swayamatmamosham. This uncontrolled mind is the greatest enemy of the living entity. If one neglects it or gives it a chance, it will grow more and more powerful and will become victorious. Although it is not factual, it is very strong. It covers the constitutional position of the soul. O King, please try to conquer this mind by the weapon of service to the lotus feet of the spiritual master and of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Do this with great care. Purport. There is one easy weapon with which the mind can be conquered: neglect. The mind is always telling us to do this or that. Therefore, we should be very expert in disobeying the mind's orders. We have to become a rebel to the mind. Actually, the mind should be trained to obey the orders of the soul. We shouldn't be trained to obey the orders of the mind, but the mind should be trained to obey the orders of the soul. It is not that one should obey the orders of the mind. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur used to say that to control the mind, one should beat it with shoes many times just after awakening and again before going to sleep. In this way, one can control the mind. This is the instruction of all the Shastras. If one does not do so, one is doomed to follow the dictations of the mind. Another bona fide process is to abide strictly by the orders of the spiritual master and engage in the Lord's service. Then the mind will be automatically controlled. I think that's my instruction for today. As I mentioned before, whenever I read, I want to get at least one instruction. Oops, I'll continue. So this is my instruction for today. Oops. There. Okay. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has instructed Srila Rupa Goswami, Brahmanda Brahmite Kona Bhagavana Jeev, Guru Krishna Prasare Pai Bhakti Lata Bij. When one receives the seed of devotional service by the mercy of the Guru and Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one's real life begins. If one abides by the orders of the spiritual master, by the grace of Krishna, he is freed from service to the mind. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 5th canto, 11th chapter of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, entitled Jaḍa Bharata instructs King Rahūgaṇa. Now we're beginning chapter 12. Started a bit late today. I'm just seeing how many words do we have to speak. I'm just curious if we're going to make it. 500, 5,400. Okay, we might not make it. But we might make it. Let's see. Conversation between Maharaj Rahūgaṇa and Jaḍa Bharata. One second, I'm just going to drink some water. Chapter 12. Because Maharaj Rahūgaṇa was still doubtful about his enlightenment, he asked the Brahman Jaḍa Bharata to repeat his instructions and clarify ideas he could not understand. In this chapter, Maharaj Rahūgaṇa offers his respectful obeisances to Jaḍa Bharata, who is concealing his real position. The king could understand by his speech how exalted and advanced he was in spiritual knowledge. He very much regretted his offense against him. Maharaj Rahūgaṇa was bitten by the serpent of ignorance, but was cured by the nectarian words of Jaḍa Bharata. Later, because he was doubtful about the subjects discussed, he made further inquiries, one question after another. First, he wanted to be released from the offense he had committed at the lotus feet of Jaḍa Bharata. Maharaj Rahūgaṇa was somewhat unhappy at not being able to grasp Jaḍa Bharata's instructions, which were full of meaning that could not be understood by a materialistic person. Therefore, Jaḍa Bharata repeated his instructions more clearly. He said that on the surface of the globe, all living entities, moving and unmoving, were but transformations of the earth in different ways. The king was very proud of his king's body, but that body was simply another transformation of the earth. Out of his false prestige, the king was misbehaving toward the palanquin carrier, as a master toward a servant, and he was actually very unkind to other living entities. Consequently, King Rahūgaṇa was unfit to give protection to the citizens, and because he was ignorant, he was unfit to be counted among advanced philosophers. Everything in the material world is but a transformation of the earth, although things have different names according to their transformations. Actually, the varieties are one and the same, but ultimately, all these varieties are vanquished into atoms. Nothing is permanent in this material world. The variety of things and their distinctions are simply mental concoctions. The absolute truth is beyond illusion and is manifest in 3 features: impersonal Brahman, localized Paramatma, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Ultimate realization of the absolute truth is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, called Vasudeva by his devotees. Unless one is blessed with the dust from the feet of a pure devotee on his head, one cannot possibly become a devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Jaḍa Bharata also told about his own previous birth and informed the king that by the grace of the Lord, he still remembered all the incidents of his past life. Due to the activities of his past life, Jaḍa Bharata was being very cautious and was therefore assuming the characteristics of a deaf and dumb man to avoid mingling with the material world. Association with the material modes of nature is very powerful. The bad association of materialistic men can be avoided only in the association of devotees. And the association of devotees, one is given an opportunity to render devotional service in 9 different ways. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atmanivedanam. In this way, in the association of devotees, one can pass over material association, cross over the ocean of nescience, and return home back to Godhead. Text 1. Oh, how many texts are we reading today? We're reading up to 10 if we manage to. Rahūgaṇa Avacha. Let me see if there's any comments or anything. Namo Namo Karana Vigrahaya Sarupatuchi Krita Vigrahaya Namo Viduta Dijabandhulinga Nigura Nityanu Bhavaya Tubhyam. King Rahūgaṇa said, O most exalted personality, you are not different from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By the influence of your true self, all kinds of contradiction in the Shastras have been removed. In the dress of a friend of a Brahman, you are hiding your transcendental blissful position. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Is that Dvijabandhu? Yeah, Dvijabandhu. And we've heard what Dvijabandhu means. It means somebody who's born in a Brahmin family, but is not qualified to be called a Brahmin. They're just a friend of a Brahmin or related to a Brahmin. So anyway, by the characteristics of a person born in a Brahmin family, but not executing the duties of a Brahmin. So you're appearing like that, but really you're just hiding your transcendental blissful position. Purport. From the Brahma Samhita, we understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the cause of all causes. Sarva Karana Karanam. Rishabdev was the direct incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes. His son Bharat Maharaj, who was now acting as the Brahman Jaḍa Bharata, had received his body from the cause of all causes. Therefore, he is addressed as Karana Vigrahaya. Jvaramayartasya yatagadam sat nidagadagdasya yatahimamba kudehamana hividashtadrishte brahman vachaste mritama aushadam me. O best of the Brahmins, my body is filled with dirty things, and my vision has been bitten by the serpent of pride. Due to my material conceptions, I am diseased. Your nectarian instructions are the proper medicine for one suffering from such a fever, and they are the cooling waters for one scorched by the heat. That's beautiful. Purport. The conditioned soul has a body full of dirty things, bones, blood, urine, stool, and so forth. Nonetheless, the most intelligent men in this material world think that these combinations the most intelligent men in this world think they are these combinations of blood, bone, urine, and stool. Oh, they recognize that. Right? No. If this is so, why can't other intelligent men be made with these ingredients, which are so readily available? The entire world is going on under the bodily conception and creating a hellish condition unfit for any gentleman's living. The instructions given to King Rahūgaṇa by Jaḍa Bharata are very valuable. They are like the medicine that can save one from a snake bite. The Vedic instructions are like nectar and cool water for one suffering from scorching heat. I like that. This material world is not a place fit for any gentleman. Tasmad bhavantam mama saṅshayartam prakshyami paschadadhuna shubodham adhyatma yoga gratitam tavoktam akyahi kotu halachetaso me. Whatever doubts I have about a particular subject matter, I shall ask you about later. For the time being, these mysterious yoga instructions you have given me for self-realization appear very difficult to understand. Please repeat them in a simple way so that I can understand them. My mind is very inquisitive, and I want to understand this clearly. Purport. The Vedic literature instructs, Tasmar Gurum Prapadyeta Jigyasu Shreya Uttamam. An intelligent man must be very inquisitive to know the transcendental science deeply. Therefore, one must approach a guru, a spiritual master. Although Jaḍa Bharata explained everything to Maharaj Rahūgaṇa, it appears that his intelligence was not perfect enough to understand it clearly. He therefore requested a further explanation. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 4:34, Tad vidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya. The student must approach a spiritual master and surrender unto him fully, pranipatena. He must also question him in order to understand his instructions, pariprashnena. One should not only surrender to the spiritual master, but also render loving service unto him, sevaya, so that the spiritual master will be pleased with the student and explain the transcendental subject matter more clearly. A challenging spirit before the spiritual master should be avoided if one is at all interested in learning the Vedic instructions in depth. Yadaha yogeshvara drishyamanam kriyapalam sarvyavaharamulam na hyanjasa tattva vimarshanaya bhavan amushmin Brahmate manome. O Master of yogic power, you said that fatigue resulting from moving the body here and there is appreciated by direct perception. But actually there is no fatigue. It simply exists as a matter of formality. By such inquiries and answers, no one can come to the conclusion of the absolute truth. Because of your presentation of this statement, my mind is a little disturbed. Purport. Formal inquiries and answers about the bodily conception do not constitute knowledge of the absolute truth. Knowledge of the absolute truth is quite different from the formal understanding of bodily pains and pleasures. In Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna informs Arjuna that the pains and pleasures experienced in relation to the body are temporary. They come and go. One should not be disturbed by them, but should tolerate them and continue with spiritual realization. Brahman Uvacha Ayam Jano Nama Chalan Prativyam Ya Partiva Kasya Heto Tasyapi Changyur Adigulpajanga Janurumadyora Shirodharangsha Angshe Didarvi Shivika Chayasyam Sovirya Rajetyapadesha Aste Yasmin Pavan Ruda Nijabhimano Rajangsi Sindhushvisti Durmadanda. The self-realized Brahman Jaḍa Bharata said, among the various material combinations and permutations, there are various forms and earthly transformations. For some reason, these move on the surface of the earth and are called palanquin carriers. Those material transformations which do not move are gross material objects like stones. In any case, the material body is made of earth and stone in the form of feet, ankles, calves, knees, thighs, torso, throat, and head. Upon the shoulders is the wooden palanquin, and within the wooden palanquin is the so-called king of Sauvira. The body of the king is simply another transformation of earth, but within that body, your lordship is situated,
and falsely thinking that you are the king of the state of Sauvira. Purport. After analyzing the material bodies of the palanquin carrier and the palanquin passenger, Jaḍa Bharata concludes that the real living force is the living entity. The living entity is the offshoot or offspring of Lord Vishnu. Therefore, within this material world, among moving and non-moving things, the real principle is Lord Vishnu. Due to his presence, everything is working, and there are actions and reactions. One who understands Lord Vishnu as the original cause of everything. One who understands Lord Vishnu as the original cause of everything is to be understood to be perfectly situated in knowledge. Although he was falsely proud of being a king, King Rahūgaṇa was not really situated in knowledge. Therefore, he was rebuking the palanquin carriers, including the self-realized Brahman, Jaḍa Bharata. This is the first accusation Jaḍa Bharata made against the king, who is daring to talk to a learned Brahman from the flimsy grounds of ignorance, identifying everything with matter. King Rahūgaṇa argued that the living entity is within the body, and that when the body is fatigued, the living entity must therefore be suffering. It is clearly explained in the following verses that the living entity does not suffer due to the body's fatigue. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti gives an example of a child heavily decorated with ornaments. Although the child's body is very delicate, he does not feel fatigue, nor do the parents think that his ornament should be taken away. The living entity has nothing to do with bodily pains and pleasures. These are simply mental concoctions. An intelligent man will find the original cause of everything. Material combinations and permutations may be a matter of fact in worldly dealings, but actually the living force, the soul, has nothing to do with them. Those who are materially upset take care of the body and manufacture Daridra Narayan, poor Narayan. However, it is not a fact that the soul or supersoul becomes poor simply because the body is poor. These are the statements of ignorant people. The soul and supersoul are always apart from bodily pleasure and pain. Sochan imangstvam adhikashtadinan vishtya nigrinan niranugrahosi janasya goptasmi vikattamano na shobhase vreda sabhasu drishta. It is a fact, however, that these innocent people carrying your palanquin without payment are certainly suffering due to this injustice. Their condition is very lamentable because you have forcibly engaged them in carrying your palanquin. This proves that you are cruel and unkind. Yet due to false prestige, you are thinking that you are protecting the citizens. This is ludicrous. You are such a fool that you could not have been adored as a great man in an assembly of persons advanced in knowledge. Ooh, burn. Purport. King Rahūgaṇa was proud of being king, and he felt he had the right to control the citizens as he liked. But actually, he was engaging men in carrying his palanquin without payment, and therefore he was causing them trouble without reason. Nonetheless, the king was thinking that he was the protector of the citizens. Actually, the king should be the representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For this reason, he is called Naradevata, the Lord among human beings. However, when a king thinks that because he is the head of the state, he can utilize the citizens for his sense gratification, he is an heir. Such an attitude is not appreciated by learned scholars. According to the Vedic principles, the king should be advised by learned sages, Brahmins, and scholars, who advise him according to the injunctions in the Dharma Shastra. The duty of the king is to follow these instructions. Learned circles do not appreciate the king's utilizing public endeavor for his own benefit. His duty is to give protection to the citizens instead. The king should not become a rogue that the king should not become such a rogue that he exploits the citizens for his own benefit. It is stated in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam that in Kali Yuga, the heads of government will be plunderers and thieves. These thieves and plunderers take the money and property of the public by force or, what's this word? Connivance. Let me see. Connivance. Connivance. Okay. Connivance. Willingness to allow or be secretly involved in an immoral or illegal act. Okay. Connivance. Therefore, it is said in the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Rajanyar Nigrinar Dasu Dharmabhi. As Kali Yuga advances, we can see that these characteristics are already visible. We can certainly imagine how deteriorated human civilization will be by the end of Kali Yuga. Indeed, there will no longer be a sane man capable of understanding God and our relationship with Him. In other words, human beings will be just like animals. At that time, in order to reform human society, Lord Krishna will come in the form of Kalki Avatar. His business will be to kill all the atheists because ultimately the real protector is Vishnu or Krishna. The Lord incarnates and sets things in order when things are mismanaged by so-called kings and heads of government. As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata. Of course, this takes many years, but the principle is there. When the king or governmental head does not follow the proper principles, nature deals out the punishments in the form of war, famine, and so forth. Therefore, if the governmental head is not aware of life's goal, he should not take charge of ruling the people. Actually, the supreme proprietor of everything is Lord Vishnu. He is the maintainer of everyone. The king, the father, and the guardian are simply representatives of Lord Vishnu, empowered by him to look after the management and maintain things. It is therefore the duty of the head of the state to maintain the general populace in such a way that people will ultimately know the goal of life. Nate vedu svartagatim hi Vishnum. Unfortunately, the foolish governmental head and the general populace do not know that the ultimate goal of life is to understand and approach Lord Vishnu. Without this knowledge, everyone is in ignorance, and all society is crowded with cheaters and the cheated. Vanchaka vanchitta. Yadakshitva veva characharasya vidamanishtam prabhavan chanityam tannamato nyad vyavaharamulam nirupyatam satkriyayanumeyam. All of us on the surface of the globe are living entities in different forms. Some of us are moving and some not moving. All of us come into existence, remain for some time, and are annihilated when the body is again mingled with the earth. We are all simply different transformations of the earth. Different bodies and capacities are simply transformations of the earth that exist in name only, for everything grows out of the earth, and when everything is annihilated, it again mingles with the earth. In other words, we are but dust, and we shall be but dust. And we shall but be dust. Everyone can consider this point. Purport. In the Brahma Sutra it is said, Tar ananyatvam arabhambhana shabdadibhya 2:1-14. This cosmic manifestation is a mixture of matter and spirit, but the cause is the Supreme Brahman, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam 1.5.20, it is said, Idam hi vishvam bhagavan ivetara. The entire cosmic manifestation is but a transformation of the energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But because of illusion, no one can appreciate that God is non-different from the material world. Actually, He is not different, but this material world is simply a transformation of His different energies. Parasya Shaktir Vividaiva Shruyate. There are also other versions of this in the Vedas. Sarva Kalavidam Brahma. Matter and spirit are all non-different from the Supreme Brahman, Bhagavan. Lord Shri Krishna confirms this statement. One second. Lord Shri Krishna confirms this statement in the Bhagavad Gita 7.4. Me bhina prakritir ashtada. The material energy is Krishna's energy, but this is separated. But it is separated from him. The spiritual energy is also his energy, but it is not separated from him. When the material energy is engaged in the service of the Supreme Spirit, so-called material energy is also transformed into spiritual energy, just as an iron rod becomes fire when placed in contact with fire. We can understand by an analytical study that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the cause of all causes. When we can understand this, that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the cause of all causes, our knowledge is perfect. Simply understanding the transformations of different energies is partial knowledge. We must come to the ultimate cause. Nate vidu svarta gatim hi Vishnum. That's Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam 7.531. The knowledge of those who are not interested in knowing the original cause of all emanations is never perfect knowledge. There is nothing in the phenomenal worlds that is not produced by the supreme energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Aromas from the earth are different scents manufactured and used for different purposes, but the original cause is the earth, nothing else. A water pot made of earth can be used to carry water for some time, but ultimately the pot is nothing but earth. Therefore, there is no difference between the pot and its original ingredient, earth. It is simply a different transformation of the energy. Originally, the cause or primary ingredient is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the varieties are only byproducts. In the Chandogya Upanishad it is stated, Yata somekena mritpindena sarvam mrinmayam vigyatam syad vacharambanam vikaro namadheyam vritiketeva satyam. If one studies the earth, he naturally understands the byproducts of the earth. The Vedas therefore enjoin, Yasmin vigyate sarvam evam vigyatam bhavati. If one simply understands the original cause Krishna, the cause of all causes, then naturally everything else is understood, although it may be presented in different varieties. By understanding the original cause of different varieties, one can understand everything. If we understand Krishna, the original cause of everything, we do not need to separately study the subsidiary varieties of the Vedas, right? Therefore, from the very beginning it is said, Satyam Param Dhimahi. One has to concentrate one's understanding on the supreme truth, Krishna or Vasudeva. The word Vasudeva indicates the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the cause of all causes. Matstani sarvabhutani na chaham teshvavastita. This is a summary of phenomenal and nominal philosophy. The phenomenal world depends on the nominal existence. Similarly, everything exists by virtue of the potency of the Supreme Lord, although due to our ignorance, the Supreme Lord is not perceived in everything. Evam niruktam kshiti shabdavrittam asanidhanat paramanavoye avidya manasa kalpitaste yesham samuhena krito vishesha. One may say that varieties arrive from the planet Earth itself. However, although the universe may temporarily appear to be the truth, it ultimately has no real existence. The Earth was originally created by a combination of atomic particles, but these particles are impermanent. Actually, the atom is not the cause of the universe, although some philosophers think so. It is not a fact that the varieties found in this material world simply results from atomic juxtaposition. It is not a fact that the varieties found in this material world simply result from atomic juxtaposition or a combination. Purport. Those who follow the atomic theory think that protons and electrons of atoms combine in such a way as to bring all material existence into being. However, the scientists fail to discover the cause of the atomic existence itself. Under these circumstances, we cannot accept that the atom is the cause of the universe. Such theories are advanced by unintelligent people. According to real intelligence, the real cause of the cosmic manifestation is the Supreme Lord. Janmadasya yataha. He is the original cause of all creation. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 10.8, Aham sarvasya prabhavo mata sarvam pravartate. Krishna is the original cause, sarva karana karanam. He is the cause of all causes. Krishna is the cause of atoms, the material energy. Bhumir apya nalo vayu kang mano buddhireva cha ahankara iti yang me bhinna prakritir ashtada. The ultimate cause is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and only those in ignorance try to find out other causes by posing different theories. Okay, we're ending with this verse. How long is the purport? Okay, anyways. Evam krisham stulam anur birhatyad asajcha sajjivam ajivamanyat dravya sabhava shayakala karma namna jaya vehi kritam dvitiyam. Since this universe has no real ultimate existence, the things within it, shortness, differences, grossness, skinniness, smallness, bigness, result, cause, living symptoms, and materials, are all imagined. They are all pots made of the same substance, earth, but they are named differently. The differences are characterized by the substance, nature, predisposition, time, and activity. You should know that all these are simply mechanical manifestations created by material nature. Purport. The temporary manifestations and varieties within this material world are simply creations of material nature under various circumstances. Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvashai. The actions and reactions carried out by material nature are sometimes accepted as our scientific inventions. Therefore, we want to take credit for them and defy the existence of God. This is described in Bhagavad Gita 3.27. Ahankara vimuratma kartaham iti manyate. Due to being covered by the illusory external energy, the living entity tries to take credit for the differentiated creations within this material world. Actually, all these are being created automatically by the material force set in motion by the energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, the ultimate cause is the Supreme Person, as stated in Brahma Samhita. Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachidaranda Vigraha Anadiradir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam. He is the cause of all causes, the ultimate cause. In this regard, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam says, Evang sarvam tata prakritvayai kalpitam vishnur anyat, evam prakritadharam swayam ananyadharo vishnur eva ata sarva shabdas chatasmin eva. Actually, the original cause is the Lord Vishnu, but out of ignorance, people think that matter is the cause of everything. Raja Guptashayo Bhumi Sharanam Cheti Lokika Vyavaharo Natat Satyam Tayor Brahmashayo Vivu. Things are contemplated on the ephemeral or external platform. But actually, this is not the truth. The actual protector and shelter of everyone is Brahman, the Supreme, not the king. Goptri chatasya prakritis tasya Vishnu swayam prabhu tava goptri tu prithivi natam gopta kshite smrita ata sarvashayaischaiva gopta cha haririshvara sarva shabda bideyascha
Shabda Vrittir Hikaranam Sarvantara Sarvabhahir Eka Eva Janardana. The actual protectress is the material nature, but Vishnu is her Lord. He is the Lord of everything. Lord Janardana is the director, both externally and internally. He is the cause of the function of words and what is expressed in all sound. Shirasaro dharata yavad grivayas tadvadevatu ashayatvam chagoptritvam anyesham upacharata. Lord Vishnu is the resting place of the entire creation. Brahmano hi pratishtaham. That's Bhagavad Gita 14:27. On Brahman, everything is resting. All the universes are resting on the Brahma Jyoti, and all the planets are resting on the universal atmosphere. In each and every planet, there are oceans, hills, states, and kingdoms, and each planet is giving shelter to so many living entities. They are all standing on the earth. They are all standing on the earth of feet and They are all standing on the earth of feet and legs, torso and shoulders. But actually, everything is resting ultimately on the potencies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, he is known ultimately as Sarva Karana Karanam, the cause of all causes. We made it! Oh, but we're over time. 3 minutes over time. That's not too bad. Okay. Oops. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol. Today and yesterday, I was kind of like not all there when I'm reading. So anyways, thank you for bearing with my reading. It's probably a little bit boring, but anyways, I think tomorrow I'll be all awake and alert and I'll be able to read properly. Anyways, just thanks for tolerating that. Jai Shishi Guru Gauranga Gandharvika Giridhari Shishi Radha Vinod Vihari Ju Ki Jai. Shri Govinda Gopinath Maran Mohan Ju Ki Jai. Nitil Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashtatarashatashmar Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj Srila Gurudev Ki Jai. Nitil Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashtatarashatashmar Srila Bhaktivedanta Vaman Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Nitil Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashtatarashatashmar Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nitil Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashtatarashatashmar Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Nitil Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashtatarashatashmar Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nitil Pravishta Mahabhagavat Srila Gorksharas Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Nitil Pravishta Srila Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Jai. Nitil Pravishta Vaishnav Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Shri Rupanu Gauriya Guru Varga Ki Jai. Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jeev Gopal Padadash Raghunath Shar Gosai Prabhu Ki Jai. Shri Sarup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shri Gaur Parshad Vrinda Ki Jai. Namachay Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Kshetra Mandala Gaura Mandala Vraja Mandala Mathura Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Sarva Abhishtapadata Giriraj Maharaj Ki Jai. Shri Radha Kunda Shama Kunda Ki Jai. Shri Amuna Devi Ganga Devi Ki Jai. Shri Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. Shri Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Shri Purnamasi Yogamaya Ki Jai. Shri Gopeshwar Mahadev Ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai. Samagata Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai.
Shinitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Vrindai Tulsidevai Priyai Keshavashata Krishna Bhakti Padadevi Sattvatai Namo Namaha Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyaya Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Dandavat Pranams. Let's see, how much do we have left in this book? Not so much. Look, only this much left. It's probably how many days? Just a few days. I think probably like 2 or 3 days we'll be finished. Alright, Haribol. See you all tomorrow. Jai Shri Radhe. Dandavat Pranams, everybody. Haribol.